whether you caught it or not, but St. Paul writes in our second reading today, I could wish that I myself were accursed and cut off from Christ. Those are challenging words. We know that St. Paul was clearly a disciple of Jesus Christ, one who chose to follow Jesus at any cost. Scripture tells us that he was scourged no less than 5 times, as Jesus was. He was beaten with rods 3 times. He was stoned to the point of death. He suffered persecution and rejection. He was shipwrecked and abandoned at sea. All for the sake of Jesus. How? Why could he endure? Because he was a disciple. He had found that pearl of great price, the buried treasure. His faith, mountainous. But that wasn't the answer he gave to the question. And so again, we must be bold enough to ask, why did St. Paul write, I could wish that I myself were accursed and cut off from Christ, sacrificing everything, heaven itself. He tells us, for the sake of my own people. We heard in that second reading all the marvelous revelation that was given through the Israelites, through Paul's people. But he's willing to offer everything. Why? For the sake of his own people. Yes, the Gentiles, but also the Israelites. Because he was a disciple, tried and true. St. Paul tells us that as a disciple, he would do anything for others to Jesus Christ. If I were to ask, how many of you are disciples of Jesus Christ? How many hands would go up? On Friday, in one of the most animated homilies I've heard Father Cliff give, he asked all of us attending that Mass that very question. How many of you are disciples of Jesus Christ? And he waited for our hands to go up. He also asked and insisted that we respond to a similar question. How many of you have a vocational call to holiness? And then he went on to remind us that each and every one of us, as a baptized person, and by merit of that baptism, is a disciple of Jesus Christ. Anointed in that image of Christ, priest, prophet, king. He also reminded us that we've been given the blueprint, that roadmap to holiness, given to us from Jesus himself. If you would be my disciple, take up your cross, deny yourself, follow me. And then, in the other readings from today, we have 2 incredible examples of what that disciple looks like. The prophet Elijah, in our gospel reading with St. Peter. In our gospel, Jesus has sent the apostles on ahead. They're crossing the sea. He has gone alone up the mountain to pray. And meanwhile, a mighty storm has sprung up. The boat with the apostles on board is in danger of being swamped and sinking. And yet, in the wee hours of the morning, they see someone walking towards them on the waters. A ghost. Jesus calls out that voice that echoes through the midst and through the rain, through the storm. No, it is I. Peter calls out, Lord, if it is really you, command me to come to you over the waters. And Jesus says, come. You know, I love that in the Scriptures, we have a record of almost as many failures as we do successes. You see, as Peter responds to that invitation and steps out of the boat, he begins to sink, crying out, Lord, save me. A disciple must, in every circumstance, be willing to look to and to respond to Jesus' invitation, his call to come. And then to rely on him for that strength and the courage that we need to sustain. Sometimes in the wee hours of the night when all seems lost, the storms of our own lives, as we see in the prophet Elijah, despite the chaos of the wind that is literally rending the mountain, in spite of earthquake, in spite of fire, he is able to listen to and to respond to the quiet whisper of the Lord. He hears God in the breeze. The invitation today is clear. You and I are to recognize and embrace the reality that we are disciples. And that as disciples we are invited to look to Christ in confidence, with courage, with strength, embracing the inspiration that comes to us in him. Invited each day to take some time to listen to the quiet whisper of the Lord, despite the chaos that seems to surround us. And last, but certainly not least, that we boldly invite others to come meet the Lord that we have encountered, that we embrace, the Lord of life, the same Lord that we encountered here in this and every Eucharistic celebration.